I hope everyone's doing well this week, week two. We've made it. Hopefully, you're feeling awake and not too blue in this January post Christmas, post holiday time. The semester is off to a full gallop, and I wanted to bring your attention to a few housekeeping items, some follow up on your discussion posts, and just some things to be mindful of as we're going fully into the course. So I've just read through all of the week one discussion posts on the questionnaire on research-based information practices. And I'm really glad that the questionnaire was generative for many of you, and I really found it quite interesting how reflective many of you were, especially around this questionnaire and then your own professional practice. So keep up the quality of the discussion posts. For the most part, I found it very good, and the level of expectation for a master's class. And the other thing I really wanted to make sure that everyone understood at this point is that it's expected with your discussion posts that you have contributed whatever the substantive discussion is by the Wednesday at 11:59 for the week. So for week two, discussion post, you will need to have contributed your discussion post by Wednesday 11:59, and then Thursday and Friday is for commenting on others and having a follow-up discussion. So make sure that you notice that. Some of you did post your substantive contribution on the Friday, and then that doesn't leave time for that follow-up discussion. So your deadline, while it's the discussion form is open until Friday, it's actually due on the Wednesday, and then the Thursday and Friday is for engagement with others. So I just wanted to make sure. I also wanted to just clarify some terminology that I found being used in the discussion posts for on the research-based information. So there's an important distinction between research-based information and practice-based information. And this is the language of this survey and of the subsequent publications that came from this survey. And if you didn't notice the reference, it is a Canadian-based survey, and it's widely available. I know some of you, there were a few comments within the questionnaire saying, I wish, my PD was modeled after this. And it may be worth looking at some of the publications and their findings, and passing that on to administrators that you work with to show that, what this larger cohort of Canadian-wide educators are actually looking for. Now back to this terminology. So I noticed several people mentioning informal and formal research, and that's a helpful distinction in terms of thinking about what is formal research and what is informal research. And when a few people were mentioning informal research, they were mentioning it around getting feedback directly from students while they're teaching. And because teaching is an engaging and it's synchronous job or engagement, then you get that direct feedback from students right away. And so I can understand using the word informal research. And if you go on to do a research project, that feedback may actually go in to be part of your research project. So what's the distinction? Well, this is where we can use the language of the survey and the publications to help us distinguish this. So practice-based information, which can be very rich and very informative. It's not to diminish that, but practice-based information is acquired through personal experience. So this information includes one's intuition and personal perceptions based on one's own observations as well as the feedback and comments of others. So this is often an individual's perspective. Now, research-based information is different in that it has a larger base that it's often representing, and it has the credibility and authority of going through a research process, as well as often when it's gone through the scientific research process, it often has a statistical validity because of the numbers that it's representing. Now, the types of information or the types of sources that are research-based information are things like scientific publications, government reports, reviews of research, data generated within your institution, and evaluations of your organization. So this is not just in my grade 1 class this morning, students were responsive to da-da-da-da-da. This is over a longer period of time this data has been collected. Maybe it represents multiple classrooms where this is happening and this phenomenon is present. And so there is this credibility and authority once there is a strong enough evidence base. It does not always have to be statistically valid in order for it to be research-based, though. I just want to really make that clear. So other terms which come up and that are important for us is this notion of empirical evidence versus anecdotal experience. And so really these are other terms which can be used for research-based information and practice-based information. Now, as educators, our field and our discipline is often known for teachers sometimes conflating this difference in that what they experience in a classroom, they will sometimes speak with a sense that this is representative of all students or that it may have a strong evidence base. And that's why this specific course is so important for really teasing out what is that difference. The other thing, and this is a bit of a digression, so I apologize in advance, but Oxford Dictionary's Year of the Word for 2016 is post-truth, and maybe many of you know this already. And in a time, in a media landscape, and in a world where we seem to be headed where truth doesn't necessarily mean much, then it poses certain questions as to what does it mean for us as researchers? When we see U.S. federal policy being created in 140 characters through Twitter, what does that mean for the various advisors who would normally be held as experts within the U.S. government, and they're no longer being consulted, but yet an individual is just creating policy alone? We see it definitely with Donald Trump, and that's a controversial issue. But I think it also raises an important, it highlights a very important tension which we're seeing in the world right now, which is what is the credibility and authority of research. We see this play out in climate change, and I know some of you mentioned that this is a particular area of environmental education that you're very interested in, and one which is a lot of theory has gone into the kinds of ways that all of a sudden an individual's values and belief system can sometimes be held on par with the strong evidence base around climate change. And how can you have a climate change denier being held and represented in the media at the same amount as the 1,800 or I'm not sure how many IPCC scientists who have come to an agreement and a strong evidence base on anthropogenic caused climate change? So how do we deal with these tensions in a post-truth time? And as researchers, while that may be playing out in the media, you can't just live in the world of research over here, and especially as teachers, because students will be questioning how things are how information is being created. And so the piece around critical literacy, um, media literacy, as well as really sort of working with and untangling epistemology. How do we know what we know? What is the theory of that knowledge? How was it created? What research processes did it go through? Is it valid? Is it credible? Is there authority? So those types of pieces, I think, are becoming incredibly more important in this wild media landscape that we're moving into. So I won't go much further on about that, but I just wanted to sort of bring a few of those pieces together so you can digest that, think about it, feel free to respond to it. I also will post a link to the analyzed questionnaire, so you can also see as a group the number of ways that you responded to the questionnaire. It's all analyzed there. I found it promising that so many of you found research-based information easy to find and easy to access. So that is wonderful. I also found it hopeful that many of you indicated that research-based information is useful to guide your professional practice. So that's great. The course has just begun. It'll be interesting to know if you feel differently or if your answers have changed towards the end. The last thing I wanted to mention, there's two more things. One, it's a reminder, if you do want to participate in a voluntary Skype later this week, there's a couple slots towards the end of the week. Please sign up. Do not feel pressured to sign up. This is really just a space to provide some incidental conversation that many students often crave in that you get in a face-to-face context, which you don't get in an online. So, but there's absolutely no grades that are associated with it. You won't be penalized if you don't sign up. The last thing I want to remind you as well is that next week there's some tight timelines, and it's suggested that you spend this Saturday developing your interview protocol. So please definitely look ahead to see what the dates are next week so you can make sure that you meet all of them. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to get in touch. And so far, I really like what's happening, and I'm seeing you work through. So keep up the great work, and we'll be in touch soon.